My wife packed her suitcases for freedom. I exposed her betrayal, filed for divorce, kept the house, won custody, and rebuilt our children's lives. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice eerily calm as she packed her suitcase in our bedroom of 10 years. 10 years of building what I thought was an unshakable foundation. 10 years of morning prayers together, of putting her and our children first in every decision. 10 years of faithfulness that apparently meant nothing now. I stood there watching her methodically fold designer clothes I had worked overtime to afford. The crucifix on our bedroom wall seemed to be watching too, a silent witness to the dismantling of sacred vows. "So you're leaving because I'm too good to you?" I managed to keep my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "Because I've been faithful? Because I put our family first?" She didn't even look up from her packing. "You wouldn't understand. I need space to experience life, to feel things you can't give me." The implication hung heavy in the air between us. Someone else was already giving her those things. My first instinct was to beg, to remind her of our children sleeping down the hall, of the community that respected us, of the promises we made before God. But something deep inside me shifted. A cold clarity washed over me. "You've already found someone," I stated. Not a question. The slight pause in her movements confirmed everything. She finally met my eyes, a flash of surprise crossing her face at my composure. "I need this. I deserve to be happy." The entitlement in her voice was staggering. I walked to the dresser, pulled out my wallet, and removed my credit cards. "The joint account will have enough for the children's expenses only, which I'll monitor daily. You want freedom? Pay for it yourself." Her mouth fell open. "But the house stays in my name. You chose to leave it. You have until tomorrow to decide if you're taking the children with you to your new life, or if they stay with me in their home. Choose wisely." She hadn't expected this. She'd expected tears, pleading, promises to change, though what exactly I should change remained a mystery even to her. "You can't just—" "I can, and I am. You don't get to throw away our marriage and still reap its benefits." I moved to the door, my voice deadly calm. "One more thing. When people ask why, and they will ask, I won't lie to protect your reputation. You're leaving because you've chosen someone else over your family, over your vows. I won't carry the shame that belongs to you." I walked out, spine straight, and closed the door behind me. In our children's rooms, I gazed at their peaceful, sleeping faces, my heart breaking for what they would soon lose. But in that moment, I made a silent promise to them. They would never see their father broken by betrayal. They would see strength, dignity, and unwavering love for them, if not for the woman who had just shattered our world for a cheap thrill. When I returned to our bedroom an hour later, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, mascara streaked down her face. My coldness had apparently sunk in. "Can we talk about this?" Her voice had lost its certainty. "There's nothing to discuss. You've made your choice. Now you get to live with it." I took my pillow and a blanket from the closet. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow you can tell me your decision about the children, and then you can leave. Your new life awaits." As I closed the door behind me, I heard her sob. But the man who would have rushed back to comfort her was gone. In his place stood someone new, someone who refused to be a doormat for a woman who mistook goodness for weakness. Morning came with harsh reality. The children sensed something was wrong the moment they entered the kitchen. I had already prepared their breakfast, maintaining our routine despite the hurricane that had torn through our lives overnight. "Mom's going on a trip," I explained, keeping my voice steady as their eyes widened with questions. "She needs some time away to think about things." When she finally came downstairs, suitcases in hand, her eyes were puffy from crying. Not from remorse, I realized, but from the shock of consequences. She had expected me to crumble, to beg her to stay. My strength had thrown her entire exit strategy into disarray. "I've decided the children should stay with you," she announced, as if doing me a favor. "At least until I'm settled." I nodded once. A wise choice. The unspoken truth hung between us. She couldn't bring our children into whatever sordid arrangement she had with her new partner, not without revealing the full extent of her betrayal to everyone we knew. After a tearful goodbye with the children, which made my blood boil at its theatrical nature, she paused at the door. "I'll call to check on them tonight. During dinner is fine, 7 o'clock. The children need structure and consistency now more than ever." I wasn't asking. When the door closed behind her, a weight lifted. The house, though filled with the quiet confusion of our children, felt cleaner somehow. I dropped to my knees and gathered them close. "We're going to be okay," I promised. "Dad's not going anywhere." At church that Sunday, her absence couldn't be ignored. Our pastor approached me with concern. "Family emergency," I said simply. I wouldn't lie, but I wouldn't broadcast our business either. Later that afternoon, her mother called, voice tight with anger. "She told me you kicked her out, that you were controlling and wouldn't let her grow as a person." I let out a short laugh despite myself. Did she mention the real reason? The one she gave me while packing her bags? Or the texts I found afterward? Silence greeted my questions. Ask her about them. Ask her about the hotel charges on our credit card from 3 months ago when she was supposedly at her sister's. Another painful silence. "Then I'll call you back." She never did. But I received a text from my wife later that night. "How dare you tell my mother? You're trying to turn everyone against me." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded her the screenshots I'd taken of her text messages with him. Messages discussing how to leave me, how to minimize her losses, how to ensure she'd get financial support. The timestamps on some dated back 6 months. "This conversation is over," I wrote, finally. "From now on, we discuss the children only. 7 p.m. tomorrow." At work the next day, colleagues noted my controlled demeanor. One asked carefully if everything was all right. "My wife has decided to pursue other options," I replied evenly. "I'm focused on my children and my work now." Word spread quickly. By midweek, I received invitations for dinner from 3 church families. Support, not pity, respect for how I was handling the unthinkable. When she called Wednesday night, 5 minutes past our agreed time, her voice had lost its edge. "The children miss me," she said immediately. "Yes, they do. They're confused and hurt, but they're resilient. I miss them too." She tried, voice softening, testing the waters. "That's natural. You're their mother." A pause. "And you? Do you miss me at all?" The audacity nearly took my breath away. "I miss the woman I married," I answered truthfully. "But she's been gone a long time, hasn't she?" Another pause. "This is harder than I thought it would be," she admitted. Betrayal usually is, for everyone involved. I could hear her intake of breath at my bluntness. "You've changed," she accused. "No," I corrected. "I've simply stopped accommodating your delusions. The children are waiting to speak with you. You have 15 minutes. As our children chatted excitedly with their mother, I stepped onto the back porch and looked up at the stars, the same stars that had witnessed our wedding vows, the births of our children, and now the death of what I once believed was sacred. For the first time since she'd left, I allowed myself to feel the full magnitude of her betrayal. But I didn't break. I wouldn't give her that power. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and made another silent vow. This wouldn't define me or my children. We would rise from these ashes stronger and wiser, and she would watch from the outside, finally understanding what she had willingly thrown away. 2 weeks into our new reality, the first cracks in her fantasy began to show. What started as daily calls to the children dwindled to every other day, then twice a week. Each time I maintained the same boundary, 7 o'clock, 15 minutes, not a minute more or less. After the children were in bed one night, my phone lit up with her name. Against my better instinct, I answered. "The children are asleep," I said flatly. "I wasn't calling for them. I need to talk to you." Her voice was different. The confident woman who had walked out our door was nowhere to be found. "About financial matters," she said hesitantly. "Things are complicated right now." I almost laughed. Complicated how? The apartment costs more than I expected, and there are deposits, utilities. I was wondering if you could help. Just temporarily. The request hung in the air like a bad smell. "No," I replied simply. "What do you mean, no?" Indignation crept into her voice. "We're still legally married. You have obligations. My obligation is to our children, not to financially support your affair." She gasped. "It's not like that. We're just—" "Stop." I cut her off. "I'm not interested in the details of your arrangement. If you need money, get a job or ask him. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to support you." "You're being cruel," she accused, voice breaking. "No, I'm being clear. There's a difference." The line went silent for so long I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she spoke again, her voice small. "People are saying terrible things about me, at church, in our friend group. You promised you wouldn't." I promised I wouldn't lie, and I haven't. When asked, I simply said you left to pursue other relationships. That's the truth, isn't it? Another long silence. "He's not what I thought," she whispered finally. The admission should have given me satisfaction. Instead, I felt a wave of pity, not for her, but for how predictable this all was. The affair fog lifting to reveal the harsh reality of choices made. That's not my concern anymore. Can I see the children this weekend? Not just a call, actually see them. I had been expecting this request. Saturday, public place. 2 hours. I'll be present. You don't trust me with our own children? Hurt dripped from every word. I don't trust your judgment. You've demonstrated that clearly. We arranged to meet at a park near our home. When Saturday came, I dressed the children in their best outfits. Not for her, but because I wanted them to hold their heads high, regardless of the circumstances. She was already waiting when we arrived, sitting on a bench, looking smaller somehow. The designer clothes she'd packed so carefully were gone, replaced by something more subdued. The children ran to her with excitement that made my heart ache for them. I kept my distance, watching. After hugs and quick updates, she glanced at me repeatedly, clearly hoping I would walk away and give them privacy. I didn't move. Eventually she approached while the children played on the swings. "You look good," she offered tentatively. I said nothing. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about us. I checked my watch. 45 minutes left. Her face fell. Is this how it's going to be forever? This is how it is now. The future isn't my concern. What if I made a mistake? She asked, her voice barely audible. For a moment her words hung in the air between us. In another life they might have been my salvation. Now they were just empty sounds. Then you'll have to live with it, like we all do. Tears filled her eyes. You're not even willing to consider... Consider what? Taking you back after you threw away everything we built? After you betrayed not just me, but our children, our faith. People deserve second chances, she insisted. Some actions can't be undone. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired. She wiped at her tears, suddenly aware we were in public. He left, she admitted last week. Said I was too much drama with the family situation. I nodded once. Predictable. Is that all you have to say? What would you like me to say? That I'm sorry, I'm not. That I'll help you? I won't. That I'll welcome you back with open arms? I can't. You're a Christian. You're supposed to forgive. The manipulation was so transparent it almost amused me. Forgiveness doesn't mean restoration. It means I won't let your betrayal poison me. It doesn't mean there are no consequences for your choices. I called to the children. Time to go. Her face crumpled. 2 hours was our agreement. As we walked away, she called after me. I made one mistake. One. After everything I've given you over the years. I turned back, making sure my voice wouldn't carry to the children. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice every day for months. And now I'm making mine. The drive home was quiet, the children subdued after seeing their mother's distress. But that night, as I tucked them in, my daughter wrapped her arms around my neck. You're the best, Dad, she whispered. I'm glad you didn't leave. In that moment I knew, whatever pain lay ahead, whatever battles with their mother, I had chosen the path of integrity. And though she couldn't see it now, that choice would reshape not just my life, but my children's understanding of love, commitment, and self-respect for years to come. A month passed, then another. I established a new normal for our household. Morning devotions with the children, work, evening routines that provided the stability they desperately needed. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something manageable, a dull ache, rather than the searing wound of those first days. Then came Sunday morning. We were seated in our usual pew when a collective murmur rippled through the congregation. I turned to see her walking down the aisle, head bowed, wearing a modest dress I didn't recognize. She slipped into a pew at the back, alone. Throughout the service, I felt the weight of curious glances between us. The pastor's sermon on redemption and second chances felt painfully pointed. When the final hymn concluded, I guided our children toward the exit, intent on avoiding what would inevitably be an awkward encounter. Not even a hello? Her voice caught me just outside the church doors. I turned slowly. Hello, I said evenly, conscious of the many ears straining to catch our exchange. Can we talk? Privately. Her eyes darted to the children, then back to me. The children and I have plans today. Please, she insisted. Just 15 minutes, the same you give me on the phone. The fairness of the request wasn't lost on me. Fine, the children can wait with the pastor's wife. Once the children were settled with coloring books in the pastor's office, we stepped into an empty Sunday school classroom. She sat primly on the edge of a child-sized chair, somehow making the absurd positioning look deliberate. "I've moved back to town," she announced. "Found an apartment close by." I nodded once. "I assume for the children's sake." "Yes. And other reasons." She drew a deep breath. "I've been seeing a counselor, working through my issues, understanding why I did what I did." "Good for you. Don't you want to know why? What made me throw everything away?" I considered the question. Would knowing change anything? It might help you understand, help you forgive. "I told you before, forgiveness doesn't mean restoration." She flinched. "I know that now." The counselor explained that what I did has consequences, that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. I waited, sensing there was more. "He thinks I was afraid of the stability you provided, that I mistook security for boredom, that I was looking for validation outside our marriage because deep down I didn't believe I deserved someone like you." The psychoanalysis left me cold. "And this revelation changes what, exactly?" Her eyes widened. "It changes everything. It means what I did wasn't about you. It was about my own brokenness. That's supposed to comfort me? It means it could be different now. I could be different." I checked my watch. 5 minutes left. Frustration flashed across her face. "You're not even trying to understand." "I understand perfectly. You made a series of choices that destroyed our family. Now you regret those choices because they didn't bring the happiness you expected, so you want what you threw away. But it doesn't work that way. The church teaches reconciliation," she countered, a hint of desperation in her voice. "The church also teaches consequences for sin. You chose to break your covenant, not just with me but with God. So that's it? No possibility of redemption?" I stood. "Your redemption is between you and God, not you and me." As I moved toward the door, she spoke again, her voice cracking. "The children need both parents in the same home. They had that. You decided they didn't need it anymore when you walked out. People are talking," she said suddenly. "At the supermarket, at school functions. Everyone knows what happened. Yes. Actions have consequences. They're saying terrible things about me. That I'm an adulteress, that I abandoned my family for a fling. Aren't those statements accurate?" Her face flushed. "It's more complicated than that. Not from where I'm standing. What happened to the man who showed grace to everyone, who believed in redemption?" The question hit deeper than she knew. I had asked myself the same thing many sleepless nights, but the answer was always the same. He learned the difference between grace and foolishness, between redemption and enabling. Her shoulders slumped. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss us, our family, our life." For the first time, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. Not just for the consequences she faced, but for the pain she had caused. It was a small spark of the woman I had married. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. "Our time is up," I said quietly. "If you want to see the children more regularly, we can arrange supervised visits twice a week." "Supervised? You still don't trust me with them?" "Trust is earned. You have a long way to go." As we walked back to collect the children, the pastor intercepted us. "I see you two are talking," he said, eyes bright with hope. "That's the first step toward healing." "Talking, yes," I clarified. "Reconciling, no." The look of disappointment on his face mirrored that of many in our congregation who believed that forgiveness and reconciliation were synonymous. But I knew better now. Some bridges, once burned, cannot and should not be rebuilt. Outside the church, as she hugged our children goodbye, she whispered something to our son that made his eyes go wide with excitement. He turned to me immediately. "Mom says she might come to my baseball game tomorrow. Is that okay, Dad?" The manipulation was so blatant, so calculated, I almost admired the audacity. Instead of answering directly, I knelt to my son's level. "Your mother is welcome at all your activities," I said clearly, just like any other parent in the stands. The emphasis was subtle but unmistakable. Her face fell as my message landed. She was no longer my wife. She was no longer part of our inner circle. She was simply their mother, a role she would need to redefine on new terms, terms that I, not she, would set. 3 months into our separation, the legal proceedings began. I'd hired an attorney who specialized in cases like ours where infidelity was involved. She had expected me to be reasonable about the division of assets. She learned quickly that my definition of reasonable had shifted dramatically. "You're fighting for full custody," she demanded during a tense phone call after receiving the initial papers. "On what grounds?" "Abandonment, moral turpitude, creating an unstable environment." I recited the grounds my attorney had outlined. "The children deserve consistency. They deserve their mother. They have their mother during supervised visits twice a week." Her breathing quickened on the line. "This isn't fair. You know I love them. I know you loved yourself more when you walked out on them." The first court date was set for the following month. In the meantime, she attended every one of the children's events: baseball games, dance recitals, school presentations. Always sitting apart from me, always trying to catch my eye, always leaving with a defeated slump to her shoulders when I remained unmoved. At our son's baseball game, she approached with a cup of coffee, offering it like an olive branch. I declined politely but firmly. "The other parents are talking," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the field. "They think you're being cruel, that I've paid enough for one mistake. Their opinion is irrelevant." "Is it? What about forgiveness? What about what we teach our children about second chances?" I turned to face her fully. "What do you think we're teaching them right now?" She blinked, confused. "We're teaching them that actions have consequences, that vows matter, that self-respect isn't negotiable, that true love doesn't betray. And what about redemption? What about grace? Grace doesn't mean there are no consequences." I kept my voice level. "You can be forgiven and still lose what you damaged beyond repair." 2 days before our court date, she requested a meeting. Against my attorney's advice, I agreed to see her at a coffee shop downtown. She arrived looking more like the woman I had married. Hair neatly styled, modest dress, minimal makeup. The transformation was clearly deliberate. "I want to drop the custody battle," she said without preamble. "You can have primary custody." I sat back, surprised. "Why?" "Because you're right." Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled around her coffee cup. "The children need stability. They need their home, their school, their routines. And they need—" She swallowed hard. "They need the better parent." The admission hung in the air between us. "And in exchange?" I asked carefully. "Regular unsupervised visitation every weekend, some holidays, and financial matters. I only want what's fair, enough to start over." The sudden reasonableness after months of demands and manipulations made me wary. "What changed?" She looked out the window for a long moment before answering. "I saw myself through their eyes. Through your eyes, through God's eyes." A tear slid down her cheek. I didn't like what I saw. Despite everything, something in her vulnerability reached me. Not enough to change my position, but enough to acknowledge her small step toward accountability. "I'll discuss it with my attorney." Her eyes met mine, hopeful for the first time in months. "There's something else. I've been offered a job, a good one. Congratulations. It's with the church's outreach program, counseling other women who've made similar mistakes." I raised an eyebrow. "Ironic. Fitting," she corrected. "Who better to understand the consequences? To warn others." I had to admit there was a certain poetic justice to it. The pastor thinks it could be redemptive for me, for the church community that's been hurt by all this. "And what do you think?" She took a deep breath. "I think it's a chance to make something good out of my failure, to help others avoid my mistakes." Her eyes held mine. "But I need your blessing. The congregation won't accept me in this role if you oppose it." The request was unexpected. She was right. My opinion carried weight. The power to support or sink her opportunity rested in my hands. "Why should I help you rebuild your reputation?" I asked bluntly. "Not for me," she said quietly. "For the women who might be spared what I did, what I lost." I studied her face, searching for manipulation. Instead, I found something I hadn't seen in years: humility. "I'll think about it." Relief washed over her features. "Thank you." As she stood to leave, she hesitated. "There's one more thing. The children asked if I could come to Sunday dinner next week, at the house." The request blindsided me. No, the response was immediate. They miss family meals. Just once a month. For them, the house is no longer your home. You chose to leave it. Her face fell. "Will it ever be, even just to visit?" I met her gaze directly. "That door closed the day you walked out. Some choices can't be undone." "People change," she whispered. "I've changed. Perhaps. But that doesn't erase what happened." As she walked away, shoulders straight despite the rejection, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not regret. I stood by every boundary I'd established. But recognition. She was trying, in her limited way, to make amends. To rebuild what could be salvaged from the ruins of her choices. It wasn't enough to restore what we had lost. Nothing could do that, but it was something, a small step toward a new arrangement where we could co-parent with civil respect, if not the love we once shared. That night I knelt beside my bed and prayed longer than I had in months, not for reconciliation, that chapter was closed, but for wisdom, for the strength to hold firm to my principles without denying the children access to their mother, for clarity about the church position, for peace in a heart that, despite everything, still ached for what might have been. When I rose, my decision was made. I would support her church role, not for her sake, but for the women she might help. I would amend the custody agreement to allow unsupervised visits. But the house would remain my sanctuary, the physical boundary that mirrored the emotional one I had drawn. She had sought freedom from the suffocation of goodness. Now she would live with that freedom, and all its attendant consequences, for the rest of her life. 1 year passed, then 2. Life settled into a new rhythm, different from what I had planned but stable. The children thrived under the consistency of our arrangement. They spent weekends with their mother. Holidays were divided evenly, and I remained the steady center of their universe. Her position at the church flourished. Women sought her counsel, drawn by her raw honesty about the consequences of her choices. She never sugarcoated her story, never positioned herself as a victim. For that, at least, I respected her. We maintained a cordial distance at school events and children's activities, no longer husband and wife, but partners in raising our children. The pain had dulled to a distant memory, replaced by a hard-won wisdom about human nature, commitment, and my own worth. The church community had finally stopped pressuring me to reconcile. The pastor, after several heated conversations, came to understand my position. "Your forgiveness without reconciliation has been a powerful testimony," he admitted during a men's breakfast. "Sometimes the greatest act of love is holding firm to truth." On a crisp autumn evening, she called outside our normal communication schedule. "I need a favor," she began, hesitation evident in her voice. "The church is hosting a conference on marriage and family next month. They've asked me to speak." "Congratulations," I replied neutrally. "The thing is, they want both sides of the story. They want you to speak too." The request hit me like a physical blow. "Absolutely not. Please, just hear me out. This isn't about us. It's about helping others avoid our mistakes, showing both perspectives, the one who left and the one who was left behind. Find another example," I said flatly. "I'm not interested in turning our pain into a public spectacle." "That's not what this is," she insisted. "It's about redemption, about growth from terrible choices. Your perspective matters. My perspective has always been clear. It didn't matter then. Why would it matter now?" A long pause followed. "Because people are watching. Our children are watching. How we handle this chapter matters for them." The mention of our children gave me pause. They were older now, more aware of the dynamics between their parents. What message did I want to send them? "I'll think about it," I conceded finally. 2 days later, I agreed to participate with specific conditions. We would not share the stage. We would not interact during the event. My message would be my own, and uncensored by her or the church. When the day arrived, I sat in the back as she addressed the packed sanctuary. Her voice trembled at first, then grew stronger as she detailed her journey from entitlement to repentance. "I told myself I deserved more," she confessed to the silent room. "That his goodness was somehow a prison. I was wrong. His goodness was a gift I was too blind to see, too selfish to cherish." She outlined the costs, not just the marriage, but her reputation, her relationship with her children, her self-respect. She spoke of the long road back to some semblance of wholeness. The most painful lesson, she concluded, was realizing that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Some trust, once broken, cannot be restored. That doesn't mean there's no redemption. It means redemption looks different than you imagined. When my turn came, I approached the podium with a calm I'd earned through countless battles with grief and anger. "My story begins and ends with boundaries," I told the attentive faces. Not the boundaries that supposedly suffocated my wife, but the boundaries I established when those vows were broken. I spoke candidly about the temptation to beg, to compromise, to accept crumbs of affection out of fear of losing everything, about the clarity that came with standing firm in self-respect. Many of you pressured me to reconcile, I acknowledged, meeting several uncomfortable gazes in the congregation. You equated forgiveness with restoration. They are not the same. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, for your children, for the person who betrayed you, is to forgive completely while maintaining the boundaries they destroyed. After the event, several men approached me privately, confessing similar struggles with unfaithful spouses. They had stayed, compromising their dignity out of fear or misplaced religious obligation. The hollowness in their eyes confirmed every choice I'd made. As I prepared to leave, she approached, maintaining a respectful distance. "Thank you," she said simply, "for your honesty, for allowing me to serve at the church despite everything, for being the father our children deserve." I nodded once, acknowledging her gratitude without inviting further conversation. "I want you to know," she continued carefully, "that I understand now what I threw away, what can never be recovered. I'm glad for you," I said, and meant it. Her growth didn't change our past, but it might change her future, and by extension, our children's. "The kids tell me you've been seeing someone," she ventured, "from the support group." News traveled fast in church circles. I had indeed connected with another member of the divorce support ministry, a widow whose situation couldn't have been more different from mine, yet who understood loss in ways few others did. "Yes," I confirmed simply. A flash of something, regret, pain, crossed her face before she composed herself. "She seems lovely. The children like her. They do." She took a deep breath. "I hope she knows what a rare man you are, what a gift your constancy is." The irony wasn't lost on me. I think she does. As I turned to leave, she spoke once more. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if I hadn't?" "If we had?" I faced her squarely. "No," I said with quiet conviction. "I don't live in hypotheticals." The finality of my answer registered in her eyes. This was the consequence she would carry forever, knowing that the door had closed not because I couldn't forgive, but because I had enough self-respect not to rebuild on a foundation she had deliberately destroyed. Later that evening, as I sat on the porch of the home I had preserved for my children, my phone lit up with a text from her. "Thank you for today, for everything. I finally understand what you meant about perfection. It wasn't suffocating. It was a standard I was too weak to uphold. I'm sorry I learned too late." I read the message twice, then set the phone aside without responding. Her journey to understanding was her own now, separate from mine. I had finally reached a place of genuine peace, not because the pain had disappeared, but because I had refused to let it define me. The woman I was now seeing joined me on the porch, handing me a cup of coffee before settling into the chair beside mine. Her quiet strength and genuine heart had been unexpected gifts in my life. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues. "You did well today," she said finally. "Your story will help others find their strength." I reached for her hand, grateful for this new chapter that would have remained unopened had I clung to what was broken beyond repair. "Not just my story," I corrected gently. "My choice to believe that I deserved better than betrayal, that my children deserve to see what real integrity looks like, that true love doesn't require the sacrifice of dignity." As darkness fell, the distant church bells chimed. Once they had rung for my wedding vows. Today they marked a different kind of commitment, to truth, to self-respect, to the understanding that sometimes the most powerful act of love is the courage to walk away from what was never meant to be restored. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.